It's time to take a stand and stop the sexualization of our children. Action for Canada has created a notice of liability to assist you. The title of this NOL is Facilitating in Exposure of Minors to Sexually Explicit Educational Resources, Activities, and/or Events. The United Nations has mandated that all member nations implement the Comprehensive Sexuality Education Resource. CSE is a learning platform that was developed within the context of a program developed by UNESCO. This so-called resource sexualizes children at the earliest ages possible, and it's no surprise that it's causing great harm to our children, as well as attacking the traditional family unit. According to Section 163.1 and Section 152 of the Criminal Code, as well as the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, it's a criminal offence to sexualize and exploit children. Here at Action for Canada, we've been working to expose this evil agenda and to empower parents, grandparents, and concerned citizens to take a courageous stand. In an effort to assist you, we've created a page on our website where you will find an incredible assortment of information on this issue, including the various programs that have been introduced into our schools. Beyond the Basics is the resource used in Nova Scotia, WIN Sex Ed is used in Ontario, CSE is used in Manitoba, and SOGI 123 is used by the rest of the provinces. By introducing these programs into our educational system, our children and youth are being exposed to sexually explicit pornographic materials in the form of books, magazines, and comic strips. Our kids are also encouraged to become members of organizations that promote sexually deviant behavior and the exploitation of minors. Be sure to take advantage of this notice of liability, which will advise teachers, librarians, trustees, ministers, etc., that they will be held personally liable for exposing minors to any form of pornography or sexually explicit material, as well as any activities or organizations promoting sexual deviancy and the exploitation of minors. By using this valuable NOL, you have the ability to demand that the CSE learning resources be immediately and completely removed from libraries and the education system. That all of the books listed, including titles by the same authors, be immediately removed, and that all educational facilities, including libraries, cease and desist promotion of any and all activities, including performers and clubs that exploit our innocent, impressionable, and vulnerable children and youth. Knowing is not enough. You must take action. Here are some powerful actions you can take to protect our youth, no matter your age or station in life. Pull your children out of public schools and universities. Run, facilitate, join, or help with a homeschool group. Get involved in writing letters and serving notices of liability. Run for office as a school board trustee, mayor, or city councillor. Connect with an Action for Canada chapter near you. We cannot ignore this message. Our children and youth are being subjected to twisted ideologies using social justice as a means to indoctrinate and groom them, and we must protect them. Thank you for taking a stand to protect kids. If you like what we're doing at Action for Canada, please consider making a donation to support our ongoing work. And be sure to join a chapter near you. God bless you, and God bless Canada.
Hello and a warm welcome as you join us for tonight's show. We're so glad to see you all. It's hard to believe we're already in the first week of December, and as a special treat tonight, the Honorable Brian Peckford is joining us. The title of tonight's show is Canada is a Christian Nation. It's December 4th, 2024, and this is the Empower Hour. Action for Canada is a grassroots movement reaching out to millions of Canadians and uniting our voices in opposition to the destructive policies tearing at the fabric of our nation. Through call to action campaigns, we educate, equip, mobilize, and empower citizens to take action. We are committed to protecting faith, family, and freedom. Freedom of speech, thought, belief, and the right to life, liberty, and the security of the person is guaranteed in Canada. As Action for Canada continues to courageously defend Canadians' rights and freedoms, we invite you to consider courageously giving, either with a one-time contribution or by becoming a monthly supporter. We want to acknowledge all of you joining us tonight and say thank you for your prayers, support, and contributions, all of which helps Action for Canada bring solution and hope to our nation. It's always an honor to introduce Tanya, the founder and leader of Action for Canada. If this is your first time joining us on the Empower Hour, Tanya is a passionate freedom fighter who has been standing up to big bully governments for over 9 years. She and the Action for Canada team are on the front lines of educating Canadians about current affairs and relevant topics that affect us all. In just a few moments, Tanya will be coming on, but first, I'd like to introduce tonight's guest. I'm so pleased to introduce tonight's guest speaker, the Honourable Brian Peckford. Mr. Peckford was the third Premier of Newfoundland since Confederation, with an impressive list of accomplishments during his time in office. He was also involved in the constitutional patriation process, the political procedure that led to full Canadian sovereignty, culminating with the Constitution Act, which was signed by Queen Elizabeth. Mr. Peckford is now the only living First Minister of that constitutional process. In 1982, he was sworn to the Privy Council by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. Although officially retired, Mr. Peckford continues to fight for Canadians' rights, and he's well known as a man of integrity as well as a fearless freedom fighter. Will you all please help me welcome the Honourable Brian Peckford. Welcome, Mr. Peckford. We're so pleased you can join us on the Empower Hour.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
Okay, so thank you, Heather, so much for the introduction of Brian. Now, it's just an honor to have you on the show again. It's been a little while, and I was listening this week as I was preparing to one of the interviews. You've been on a couple of times, so one of the interviews that we've done previously, and at the time we were again talking about Canada being a Christian nation and the purpose of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. You so nicely went through explaining how the Bill of Rights differs from the Charter of Rights. And I think it would be good to go over those things again, because the people following us now have increased from those following us a couple of years ago, as many more Canadians have woken up, which I'm quite excited about. And you must be as well. But we for sure are in a battle. And I can, as I was preparing as well, I was really thinking about the fact of how you personally would feel about the Charter being used in the way that it is, not according to the design of the Charter, but being exploited in such a terrible way. So, Brian, where would you like to start tonight in the conversation?
Well, I think it may be really worthwhile to do what you just said, and that is a lot of people get confused between Canada's Bill of Rights and Canada's Charter of Rights. So let's clear that up or clarify or elaborate on that for any new people who are not familiar. The Bill of Rights was an act of the Parliament of Canada by Prime Minister John Diefenbaker back in 1960. And it was just a federal bill. Everybody has to remember that from 1867 to now, from the first Constitution Act, 1867, we are a federal nation. We're not a unitary state like England or like France. We're like the United States or Germany or Australia. And that means that these countries are made up of a central government and various state or provincial governments, and the power is shared between the central government and the state governments or provincial governments. That being said, this Federal Act, therefore, in the federal parliament, does not apply to any provincial law. It only applies to federal law. Okay, big difference. In other words, federal employees, people under federal jurisdiction. But as we know, a lot of Canada, through education and health and natural resources, are all exclusively provincial. Therefore, the Federal Act, the Bill of Rights, does not apply. It was a good start in that it started to recognize individual rights of Canadians, but it was limited because it only applied to federal area jurisdiction, and Canada is more than a federal area jurisdiction. All the provinces have certain powers. The powers are shared between the two governments. So therefore, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms was necessary in order to have a national act which covered both federal jurisdiction and provincial jurisdiction. That's the big difference. We have to understand also that when you hear, and this is a very easy mistake that everybody makes, is that when people say federal, they often think that means national. No. Federal only means federal. In other words, the federal government. It doesn't include the provinces. And so therefore, when I say national, that means it includes both the federal government and the provincial government. So the only way you can get a national act is through the Constitution. All the other acts are going to be provincial or federal in one area or the other. It takes a Constitution to have a national act. So that's why in 1981 and 82, we were negotiating a national act, that is, where we're negotiating additions to the Constitution of 1867. So that's the big difference. And we should always remember that we are a federal nation, and therefore the Bill of Rights only applies in federal areas. It doesn't apply in provincial areas at all. And the act itself, the last thing in the Bill of Rights, it says that this act only applies to the federal jurisdiction. They actually even say it in their own act to make sure there was no dispute about that. But as I say, it was the first time since we became a country in 1867 that there was something that was actually acknowledging the rights of individuals as opposed to groups or as opposed to governments. And that was very important. John Diefenbaker was very adamant on that. Being a prairie lawyer, rural lawyer, I met him, by the way. I went to one of his rallies in St. John's, Newfoundland years ago when I was not a full adult. But I knew he was coming, and I made sure I went to his rally, and I really enjoyed it. And one of the things I got from that, and from others who were close to him, were his desire to see individual rights being honored, and that's crucial, very important person in the history of Canada. So we needed something that was going to apply to Canadians everywhere and to all jurisdictions. That's why we had the Constitution Act of 1982. The other thing that people have to remember, I think, that is very important, is that people always bring up the problems with the Charter. A lot of people think that we were just negotiating the Charter. We were not. The Charter was only one part of 7 parts of the Patriation Act, or the Constitution Act, as it became known the next year, 1982, when it went into law. It was called the Patriation Act when it was passed in 1981 by the First Ministers. And then when it went to the legislation, it got called the Constitution Act 1982. Same thing. Only one in legislation, the other the original agreement. So I was part of that original agreement. Unfortunately, I'm the only one left. I was one of the younger premiers at the time, and that's why I'm still around. I really wish that there were other premiers still alive, because they would completely support what I've been saying over the last 3 or 4 years. They would be in complete agreement, especially premiers like Premier Bennett of British Columbia, who was a father to the Patriation Act, right? Peter Lougheed, Alan Blakeney, right? And Manitoba's Sterling Lyon. Sterling Lyon was a real lion. He was not L-Y-O-N. He was also L-I-O-N, because he was a very, very strong individual right person. Okay. So was the PEI Premier, Agnes MacLean, of the time. He was a veteran. And he was a Veteran Affairs Minister in John Diefenbaker's government before he became Premier of PEI. This is important history, I think, for people to understand. There were some really well-grounded Christian people, including René Lévesque, by the way, a Roman Catholic. He was a Christian.
Right.
But Alan Blakeney came out of the Presbyterian faith, for example. I came out of the United Church faith, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so on. But we were all Christians. John Buchanan of Nova Scotia. So there were a lot of us there who were very strong Christians, but also very strong individual rights people, as we understood the Judeo-Christian philosophy and idea manifested through our various Christian denominations, okay? So that's the other important thing to understand. If we were just negotiating the charter alone, it would have been a lot easier to finalize a lot of other things in it as related to individual rights. But we had Aboriginal rights, we had equalization, we had minority language rights, we had an amending formula that we had to negotiate, because the whole reason why we hadn't patriated the Constitution right up until 1981 was because the provinces and the federal government couldn't decide upon an amending formula. We couldn't bring the whole thing home and not have any way to change it. And we had 10 attempts from 1927 to 1981. There were attempts to bring it home and to have an amending formula, but they all failed. And they failed mainly over the provinces and the federal government not agreeing to an amending formula until now. So federal versus national, understanding that all of the people who were involved and who were crucial to getting this passed, and all of us were Christians. Okay? And we knew, as I keep saying in my essays and my articles, we knew no other God. There was only one God for us, and that was a Christian God. Our whole history, our whole education, right? As individuals, as people, the 10 of us, and the Prime Minister himself was a Christian. And so this business of somehow trying to say something anti-Christian about the Charter is so terrible that it's now, your other point that you asked me, and then I'll stop and let you ask a question, is I am how I feel. And that's why I'm so aggressive on it now. They have abused our Constitution. They have abused our Charter. Both the governments of Canada, all the governments of Canada, and the courts. These people have bought into an erroneous narrative as it relates to what we were doing, what we were saying. And it's very, very sad. I'm glad I'm still alive so that I can articulate this, so that it becomes part of history, at least, right, that there was somebody around. You see, Tanya, there's a reason why the courts won't call me to court. Because they know I'm going to say exactly this. In my own court case that I fought and lost to the Federal Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court of Canada, all three, they wouldn't even hear it. They called it all moot. They used their own rules to turn down even hearing it. my lawyer specifically asked the federal lawyers, when are you going to call Mr. Peckford? Because you're saying things here in your depositions, which are completely contrary to what Mr. Peckford, one of the authors of this, is saying. So you would want to challenge him, I'm sure. They said, we have no intention of ever calling Mr. Peckford. Mm-hmm. In the Emergencies Act, Rulo Commission, my name was put forward to speak because I had gone to the truckers' convoy. I had met with the truckers' convoy board, right? I had met with all of the people involved. I had spoken on their behalf in front of Parliament Hill and supported them 100%. My lawyer was their lawyer, by the way. Keith Wilson was my lawyer first. Then they came looking for Mr. Wilson, and Mr. Wilson had to call me and say, I got something to ask you, Premier, and I know you may not agree to this, because we both agreed that I would be your lawyer, and we signed off on it, and it's all law and legal, and therefore you have every right to say no to what I'm going to ask now. But the truckers have come to me asking if I would help them. Mm-hmm. I told them I'd have to check with Mr. Peckford first. And they did, and I said, go for it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, however it impacts me in the interim, that'll only be temporary. You take on that job if you want to take on that job. I'm fully in support of it. And so I was keenly involved in all of that thing that went on in Ottawa. And I helped arrange the meetings between the truckers and the Ottawa City Council. It was I who made that possible, okay? So that's why my name was put forward to appear before the Rulo Commission, and besides which I was the only living First Minister to have signed right on. Once again, they denied me an opportunity to speak before them. And other lawyers across the country have put my name forward, and every time the courts have ignored or denied me an opportunity to speak. And the reason why is because they know, I know what happened in 1981. They know that I know that I'm going to be saying to them that you are wrong when it comes to the opening words of the Charter. This was to be all interpreted in the framework of our Judeo-Christian principles.
Oh,
they know I'm going to say that.
I absolutely adore you. I love it. You are a national treasure. You have such a wealth of information, and it is absolutely such a shame that the courts, that the existing government right now, the Liberal Party, are not respecting you as an individual who was there at the time that all of this was signed. And one of the things I look at is that, as we know, the courts, the judges are basing their decisions on their own interpretations, their misinterpretations of the law, their misinterpretations of the Charter. They're not only doing it at the provincial level and the federal level, but they're doing it in the kangaroo courts. As we know, in the human rights tribunals, people have been persecuted, smeared. We're not just talking about COVID. We're talking about the radical trans activists. We're talking about the so-called rights that trump Canadian rights of immigrants based on human rights. I mean, Honorable Peckford, the direction this has gone, it's like the wild, wild west. And the privilege of being able to have you on the show is to hear your firsthand testimony, and like you say, have it on the record so that our viewers can hear from you, because the mainstream media is definitely not going to be reporting on this. So where else are our viewers, our Canadians, going to hear it from?
They won't even publish a letter of mine now.
Well, you're being banned in schools, for Pete's sakes. If I'm right, if I'm remembering correctly, you can't even go.
They prevented me from going into schools. The schools won't even when the teachers and the parents have asked for me to come and explain the Constitution to them. I've been turned down to speak at universities. Students have come to me. One very large university came to me, and the students did, and came and met with me and said, "Would you appear before our constitutional law class?" I said, I'm waiting for the universities to come. I said, I'm available. And I said, I'll go anywhere in Canada on my expense, on my tab. It won't cost anybody anything for me to go there. The students won't have to pay anything. The professors, the university, I'll come on my time. On my tab, won't cost anything. You just tell me the day and the time, and I'll be there. And the students at this university thought that they had the professor on side, but when he checked with his superiors, they turned it down. And that's what happened in my local high school. Same thing.
It's shocking. And when I see what's going on after the Empower Hour, I'm always doing a weekly news update at this point. Yes. And the second half has been a lot on extremism, terrorism, mostly regarding the extremist Muslims and as well the Khalistani Sikhs. But what people don't understand is the extremism that's happening within the Native community and how they're exploiting the Native community in order to advance the global agenda and wipe out our national sovereignty. And I spent probably 11 hours yesterday putting an action together that is calling for UNDRIP to be revoked, as well as Sugar Cane, that new documentary that's going to be launched on December 9th, banned, and for the interlocutor Kimberly Murray investigated, because she is aligning herself with the United Nations as if she's an arm of the UN acting here within Canada, but so is, I would say, even our Minister of Indigenous Affairs. And so it'll be interesting because I've got a lot of that I'm going to report on after the show. But I'll be called a hater. I'm being called a racist. People are maligning me because they say that I'm not being loving towards the Indigenous community, the natives. And I'm like, you have no idea how loving it is for me to take it in the chops like I am, to speak these bold truths, because we have been in this psychological military style warfare, getting us all to believe a lie and go along with it, while the noose is tightening around our neck to our very own demise. So quite frankly, I'll take it in the chops. I'll proclaim the truth until people understand that what I'm saying is the actual facts. And that is what you have done. You have come out on the front line. You say, hey, excuse me, but I was there when the charter was signed. I understand it. I think you spent, was it 17 months putting this together and negotiating it? I think you know the facts of the matter of what we're talking about here.
I came into it right after I became premier right in 79. And this was early 81, right? When we got involved in this.
Right.
And so, yeah, and I was with it right from day one, right through for the whole 17 months. And that's the other thing people don't understand. There were a lot of people involved in this, loads, scores and scores of people, because each province had its own delegation, its own advisors, and so on. And they were all part of the negotiations. The negotiations were done through the first ministers who gave direction that came from their cabinets to their intergovernmental affairs ministers, if there was one in the various provinces, and their ministers of justice. Those were the three elected people in each province that took on board most of the responsibility, and that then came from cabinet. Of course, the power came from cabinet to me as first minister, then to instruct the ministers how to operate from one week to another as they were talking to the other provinces and talking to the federal government. And yeah, this was a 17-month marathon, and ending up in the fall of 1981. And even then, when we started that 17 months, it got abruptly delayed or suspended because the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau's father, decided that we were too vexatious a group of people because we were exercising our power under the Constitution, that he was going to do it all alone. And so he went and passed his own law, by the way. People forget this. He passed his own law. And the Parliament went along with it. Most of his MPs went along with it, saying that I'm going to patriate the country. Here is my patriation, and here is the charter that I want, and then I'm going to go and get it done. Well, we took him to court, and we won in the court. In September 1981, the Supreme Court of Canada said, you can't do this, Prime Minister Trudeau. You can't do this. This is unconstitutional. That's when he came back to the table in November of that year And that's how we got the patriation and got the charter passed.
Right.
So, this was a fight right from day. This was a fight from day one, because we were even fighting the federal government itself.
Yeah, and explain to our viewers as well what then Prime Minister Trudeau did to make every effort and attempt to remove Christianity from the Constitution.
Well, all the way through, this was something that was keenly the view of the premiers, especially the Gang of Eight, because two provinces went with the federal government when the federal government tried to do it alone and lost in the courts. Ontario and New Brunswick stayed with the federal government. And of course, they had egg on their face afterwards as well. But yeah, the whole, and since, by the way, since the Constitution got passed, every attempt has been made by the courts to ignore the opening words of the Constitution. There's one Alberta judge talked about the supremacy of God and said, well, we didn't say Christian God, and therefore it was, could be anybody's God, right? And here we were all Christians, right? We thought, like the people in the United States in their Constitution, that it was self-evident, that this was self-evident. If all of the, if it is like the old saying we have these days, that if it quacks like a duck, right? If it walks like a duck, it has feathers like a duck, blah, blah, blah. I guess it's a duck. Yeah. And the same way with the Christian nation supremacy of God provision.
Right.
But what people have tried to do is most people, for whatever reason, have become very, very secular. It's all going to turn on them one of these days.
It already is.
It's starting to now. It's starting to turn on them now, and it's starting turning on big time in the United States. And it's going to turn on them, and it's turning on them in Slovakia and in other places where they're starting to recognize, right, that what civilization has achieved, what mankind has achieved, has been mainly because of the Judeo-Christian framework in which 100%. All of this happened. Otherwise, we would not be where we are today. We would not have the kind of society we have. Normally, we have the material prosperity we have without some kind of framework. And it was the one that succeeded most since we formed nations has been through this framework. And it is very sad how everybody has tried now to ignore it, right? And there are a few lawyers around who are still on our side, but the majority went through a law school which completely ignored. They selectively decided what was important in the charter and what wasn't, and they selectively left out the opening words to it.
Right. And well, we're reminding them. And I truly believe that, that it says in the Bible that nothing is new under the sun, that evil rises. And then through that evil rising, people come back to God. They understand the value in that and the principles, biblical principles, and what that provides to a nation. And I think it was I should have written the date down. It was like in 2016 that the Lord said, Tanya, I want you to proclaim Canada as a Christian nation. And back then I'm thinking, well, we are a Christian nation. But I got busy doing it. And God provided me this platform through my faithfulness in doing so. And I developed this saying that Canada is a Judeo-Christian nation inherited through our British Commonwealth. It's embedded in our Magna Carta. It forms our laws and our values and is a system of governance that sets us apart from totalitarian, communist and extremist regimes, giving us the freedom to believe or not to believe without fear of persecution, oppression, or even death. And so I say, if you are at odds with that, I challenge you to think about the 56 Islamic majority countries, Pakistan, North Korea, China, India, any other non-Christian nation, and see that there are people there, good people, who are desperately wanting freedom but living under oppression. The problem is that many of those people have now come to Canada, and instead of shedding themselves of their former culture They're now transplanting here their failed foreign systems of governance and
Yes.
expecting Canadians to go along with it. Now, all of this is, of course, a diabolical plan and a strategy by the United Nations, World Economic Forum, and the globalist young leaders like Trudeau and Macron and others got on board. They said, we're going to entertain this migration compact to allow mass migrants to flood our nations who do not uphold our principles so that they could destabilize and destroy our democracy. And so the more that we can speak about this honestly, the more Canadians' ears are finally understanding what the value is in embracing our biblical principles. They have no choice. There's only one choice. You see where secularism has brought them, because they went from Christianity to this multiculturalism, which has to be revoked, to the secularism, to a post-national state with no core identity. How are you liking it?
Yeah,
Make a choice.
Exactly. All you got to do is look at China and look at Russia and like I say, North Korea, and the areas of the world that have flaunted, right, the supremacy of God and the rule of law. And you see what has happened. I mean, it's obvious. Anybody to look out on the planet and see what has happened over the last 2,000 or 3,000 years have no alternative but to come to the conclusion that the way forward for mankind is through a Judeo-Christian framework. And that's why the opening words, and by the way, a whole bunch of people, lawyers and courts and judges, have all talked about the preamble. We never call it a preamble. They put that name on it. We never call it a preamble. There's nothing in here. It is here. There's nothing in here which says preamble. It is the opening words. It's the first part one of our charter, right? And at the end, as I said when I was on your program before, that opening sentence ends not with a period, right? Not with a comma. It ends with a colon. Everything comes after this.
Right.
This is the foundation through which everything is to be interpreted, including the fact that we're a multi-heritage country. But it all has to be done in the Christian Judeo framework. That's why that is there. It's there for a purpose. It wasn't there as a decoration at all. It was there for that reason. And I'm extremely proud of it. And you know, that's why I advocate and get so passionate about it when I talk about it, because I remember.
Right.
And it was like, once we talked about it, I mean, it was like over in a second for the 8 premiers, and we were going to control, we did control the agenda afterwards, as you know. We controlled that agenda because we stopped Trudeau in the courts, right? And so Ontario and New Brunswick lost, as did the federal government, and we were the ones who won. So we were controlling the agenda. And we're the ones who made sure that was in there, right?
And
so
what what our viewers need to understand, the supremacy of God is spelled with a capital G. And
That's right.
all other gods, honestly, it's a fact, all other gods are spelled with a small g, small G-O-D. And so that's one part of it. But the Constitution, coming from British rule, it was tied to the coronation oath, which is the oath that the monarch took every year to govern all member nations under the Commonwealth by Judeo-Christian Protestant biblical principles. So the Constitution incorporated that. The coronation oath is incorporated. So there's no question about it.
Yes, and the other thing that you got people have to remember is this. This is really, really, really. How did Prime Minister Trudeau Sr. lose in court in September? It was not by what was written down. It was by convention. Convention being British common law, which took, that's how he lost. And so the other argument that very few people make, but which we can make, and which you are making now, and which is just as strong, because we have a Supreme Court of Canada decision of 1981 behind us, a recent modern interpretation of the Constitution, which says that we are the BNA Act, we will be the 1982 Act when it gets passed, but that's not all. We're also part of custom and convention coming out of our past. And what was our past? Our past was a Judeo-Christian heritage past, which framed what England became.
Amen. Amen to that. And can you explain to our viewers as well how it was that, why it was that Pierre Elliott Trudeau backed down from being very adamant about removing Christianity? It was one of the Liberal MPs that I believe addressed this issue with him. Do you recall?
Yes, but what happened was when he got close, when he had this thing through the House of Commons back in '81, he started to get cold feet after he passed it, because there were a number of MPs, including Conservative MPs at the time and the Conservative Party, who were saying, I don't know, I think the provinces might have a point here. We took him to 3 courts, Newfoundland Court, Quebec Court, and Manitoba Court, 3 appeal courts, for what he was trying to do. But he had no choice when it came down, when he lost in court. He had no choice but to accept that opening words, because we weren't going to change it. That was non-negotiable. So what was negotiable were all the other parts to the Constitution as related to equalization, how that was to be worded, Aboriginal rights, First Nations, how that was to be worded, the amending formula, what that was going to end up being. All of these were the moving parts of the Constitution Act. What was not a moving part was that opening statement. Right. And so he relinquished that. He knew he couldn't win that battle.
Right. And I know that, well, many have stated that he's actually a communist. I know that he was under the Catholic Church, but it would be like calling his son a Catholic. I mean, that needs to be evidence in in your walk, and that's not evident right now. But he said he'd finish what his father started, and that seems to be the direction he's going as far as communism is concerned. But I had read also that one of his Liberal MPs had provided him a brief, and it was based on the more liberal churches were declining in attendance, and it was the conservative-minded Christians that were growing, and that this would eventually be a threat also to his voting bloc.
Could very well be as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was no. We knew we were on pretty safe ground when we took him to court. All of our advisors from British Columbia to Newfoundland, Ontario, New Brunswick, notwithstanding, we knew our case was strong, and that he did not have the power to do what he was saying he was going to do. Neither did the Parliament of Canada have the Parliament. Parliament of Canada is the federal parliament.
Yeah, no doubt that
That's why we got a parliament in Victoria and in St. John's and everywhere in between. It's because we have a shared power, and it's a federal state. And so, that's what people don't really understand, is that provinces have a lot more power than a lot of people think they have. And we should be, and individuals as well, and we should be fighting and exercising that power more than we are.
I agree. There was an article that I had sent you as we were preparing this week for you to come on the show, and I was a bit disturbed by it. It was written in February of this year. It was talking about Section 27, and it was about multiculturalism and the rights, as if there was these blanket equal rights for people from other cultures being able to practice their religion and their laws and etc., which is very dangerous because we have Sharia law creeping into Canada, etc. And it was such a relief to me when you had said, Tanya, those are just sections, but they are all governed under, as you said, the colon of supremacy of God. If it doesn't align with it, these belief systems definitely cannot come in. And there was a couple of federal court rulings that were mentioned in the report. And you had just mentioned there was a Supreme Court ruling that did not recognize the supremacy of God. And based on the win that you had against Senior Trudeau, there should be a challenge against those couple of Supreme Court rulings based on the case that you have just mentioned.
No question, and there's that's where we've really gone astray, is because law societies, the courts, and so on have embraced a secular notion of this nation, which is completely unconstitutional,
right,
and cannot stand. Look, the opening words are the framework, and it's within that framework that immigrants and everybody else must operate. It's within that framework. The framework is a Judeo-Christian framework, and it's within that Section 27 will apply, but not without it.
That was a great relief. And we are going to continue to challenge. I'm so excited. I expected to hear from Rocco today, but we're filing our new notice of civil claim. We had held off for a bit because we should have had a new government in British Columbia. But as you know, there's some, I would say, corruption that had gone on in the BC provincial election. And so we're filing anyways. We're going to be moving forward. But I'm very grateful that Rocco recognizes the supremacy of God in Canada as well. So we've got a good lawyer as far as that's concerned. Brian, we're coming up pretty soon to the hour, and I wanted to move to questions from our viewers. So if anybody has a question, please don't put it in the chat, put it in the Q&A, and I will just try to cover as many as I can. Are you ready? Here we go. It says, one thing I'm wondering is the following. In the USA, those in government behind the scenes are employees of a private corporation and not working for the people of the USA. I'm hoping this isn't a common law question. We'll see where this goes. All their actions are for the benefit of the owners of private corporation. Is it possible this could be happening in Canada as well?
I don't understand the basis of the question, because I don't.
Me too.
The American Constitution is pretty clear on how the United States operates. So I would question the basis of the private corporation argument. Many people are trying to make that in Canada. They're also making the thing that the Britain still controls Canada, and I always point people to right in the Constitution Act 1982. No act of the Parliament of the United Kingdom passed after the Constitution Act of 1982 comes into force shall extend to Canada as part of its law. In other words, when the Constitution Act 1982 was passed, that ended any law from the United Kingdom of having any power over Canada. So
how do you then connect
what are
coronation
Governor
oath?
General or Lieutenant Governors and all? These are all part of our history, part of our past, and we acknowledge them, and they're still part of the overall framework of the country. But the Parliament of England, of the United Kingdom, has no more power to do anything in Canada. But we do acknowledge where we came from and from whence came our history.
Okay, well, how is it that a bill has to receive legislation royal assent?
Because that is a custom of the nation, right? That's a custom of the nation. But I can give you a really good example. I had a case when I was premier where the Lieutenant Governor refused to sign. And I went and met with the Lieutenant Governor and said, your power to deny this is no longer there. If you look back from 1867 right on through, there's a new convention in play. And that convention is that once the Parliament passes this, it is passed. It is signed by Her Majesty's representative in Canada. And so I said, unless you sign this executive order that's passed duly by the cabinet as a result of an act of the legislature, and then we will have a battle on our hands, and I'll have a press conference. He signed it. That was the end of that. So convention now, and as I said earlier, convention is just as much a part of the Constitution as is the two acts, 1867 and 1982. And convention now is clearly established that the will of the people, of the Parliament, of the provinces and the federal government takes precedence over any royal disagreement.
Okay, so, but the coronation oath is still a living, breathing document, and we are still part of the Commonwealth. And the coronation oath, as I mentioned, like Charles tried to sabotage the coronation oath by making it a multi-religious affair, and the Church of England rose up in defiance against it because it's a Christian ceremony. And within that, the king swore an oath that all the Commonwealth would be governed by the Protestant religion and biblical Christian
But
principles.
well, we know that's not true. That's not what happened. I mean, we know now, since 1867, every time a government of Canada or a government of the provinces passes an executive council order as a result of legislation passed by that parliament in that particular jurisdiction, gets approved by the Queen's representative, which means now we have a constitutional provision called a convention, which demonstrates Canada's independence from England.
But with the Queen's signatory to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it had to bear, as you said, that to be governed by Christian principles. And I'm just trying to emphasize why it is so important that the Charter of Rights states the supremacy of God, which
Exactly.
aligns with the oath and the
yes,
British
it aligns with our
rule.
past.
Yes.
But the point of it all being, my point in the beginning was that we are an independent nation, and we have demonstrated that from the First World War to Second World War to everything that we've done, all of the international organizations that we've joined as a sovereign nation. For people to argue that somehow the Parliament of the United Kingdom can intervene is wrong. And it's wrong, and the state's right there within our own Constitution.
Right, but as long as we're upholding it, and so that comes to my next question from somebody. It's like, how do we deal with the fact that our government is ignoring our constitutional rights?
Okay, that's within Canada, and
Yep.
that's up to. We have an amending formula which we passed in 1981, and it's up to the premiers and leaders and the citizens of this country. And this is where I'm really sad, is because many people have gone along with the mistaken notion about what the Constitution is all about. And that's a very sad day. Thankfully, in the United States, there are still a lot of people around who believe in the original Constitution. And they're starting to withhold that the Supreme Court of the United States is doing a fabulous job in withholding what the original author said. And we should be doing that here in Canada. That's where the Americans are way ahead of us in jurisprudence and constitutional law, and upholding the intent and wording of what was passed. If you want to change it, there is an amending formula. That was the whole other reason for the charter, is to provide an outlet to change it in the future by us, not by England, but by us. And
Yes.
that's section 38 of the Constitution Act of 1982. So we can change it if we want. Everybody is ignoring the amending formula. That's right there. That was one of the big reasons we were trying to get the charter, trying to get everything back to Canada, and we couldn't do it because we couldn't get an amending formula. But we now have an amending formula in our Constitution which says, if you want to change it, here's how you go about it. But everybody's ignoring that. That's the elephant in the room for all those people. Right. We do have an amending formula. We don't have to go back to England to get anything passed. We're our own sovereign nation, and we can do and pass whatever we like.
And I want to take it a step further, because you've given us a gift. It's about asserting those rights.
Exactly.
And that's why Action for Canada was so successful with our notices of liability, because we quoted the Charter, we quoted our privacy rights, we quoted everything possible, and the Canadians that asserted their rights were on the winning side of this fight. And we need to move forward with it. The other thing, I want to put a fire under everybody's butt that's watching today, and part of this is what Honorable Peckford is just saying is how the United States won, how countries in Europe and the UK are winning, is because the people got out and they got involved in the politics.
Exactly.
We have these rights. We are affirming to you
Exactly.
today, we are a Christian nation.
See what happened in France today? See
Yes.
what happened in France today? For the very same reason. They know they've gone too far beyond where they want to go, right? They don't want all this bureaucracy from Brussels, right? They want to go back to the fundamentals of what made France a sovereign nation. And it's going to happen all over the world. And Trump is helping bring it about quicker than it would otherwise come.
Yeah.
Right?
Tell people what happened in France today. It was going to be in my weekly news
France
update.
Today, there was a non-confidence motion posted by Le Pen's organization, a party in the parliament, in the States General, and the government of France lost. In other words, the majority of MPs said, "We have no more confidence in you, Prime Minister," the Prime Minister who was appointed by Macron, the president, right? And so now they're in a turmoil over there because there is not a majority in the States General that's going to pass the budget. They were trying to pass this budget and try to ram it down everybody's throat. But it goes deeper than that in France. France is much deeper than that because they went into this immigration thing big time with Germany. We're all now having to back off and back away from it, right? They were demeaning Christianity. They were putting Christianity and God and Jesus in second and third place. And they're paying a price for it now. And Le Pen and her party and those groups are, and look at Germany. Germany is a basket case. The top economy in Europe is a basket case. Why? Because they have denied, they have gone a secular route with the Greens and others in the left-wing groups in Germany to a point where suddenly the people are starting to rise up and say, we had enough of this, and they're starting to vote for parties that are more fundamental in their approach to governance and more fundamental in their approach to understanding that we got where we got and we prospered as we prospered because of a Judeo-Christian framework. And that's, I mean, this is what's happening in France today.
I love it. And I know I've heard about Germany as well. Like it was in East Germany, just had a landslide victory. They haven't had one like that since the Second World War. And
Exactly.
West Germany is heading towards another election for the same reasons. But, you know, unless you put the God back on the throne in your country, you know, your country will fall. And we've experienced that. We've gone the debauchery. I mean, the devil doesn't have a limit on evil. And we opened the door, and now it's time to really close that tight and get back with God and biblical principles.
But I really want Tanya for your viewers to recognize that they can go and look it up themselves. The Canadian Constitution Patriation Resolution and Schedule A, and Schedule A under the talks of and it's then called sort of the Canada Act, whereby as soon as we passed that Constitution in 1982, the United Kingdom Parliament had no more say over anything in Canada. Okay.
There we go.
And so that ends that kind of linkage where there's power left in England through their United Kingdom Parliament to do anything in Canada. And so we are completely a sovereign nation. And where our concentration should be is where you talked about it to be. It's with us, the people. We have the power under our Constitution. We have the power through our amending formula. We got to get our premiers on side and push for it. What the federal government has done over the years is bought the provinces off through the Canada Health Act and through the equalization formula and so on. When the provinces should have resisted and said, no, we're going to negotiate this, but you're not going to be dictating to us. So it's made a lot of the smaller provinces weaker and therefore not so inclined to stand up for the rights they have under the Constitution. We got to get back to that. But in order to get back to that, we've got to start with the opening words, because everything comes from the opening words. Whereas this country was founded on the principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. Now you can go ahead under those framework principles and interpret the rest of the Constitution that we're going to pass.
Right. And that means, based on these biblical principles, that
Absolutely.
Canada needs
Absolutely.
to shut down all of the false gods, because the top two commandments in the Word of God are, you shall have no other gods before me, or idols. And
Exactly.
those false idols and gods that are coming into this nation are devastating the hearts and minds of our children. And we see it in the streets. And so every mosque, every Islamic center, every temple, God love these people. He really does. But we're not going to allow them to be erected in Canada any further in order to honor God. He says he's a jealous God.
Well, look what's happened with Israel, right?
Right.
And I agree with you on the United Nations. We should get out of the United Nations. United States United Nations should be disbanded. It's been taken over by a bunch of secular Europeans and other non-Christian nations who want to destroy the Judeo-Christian civilization.
It consists of, it's a third Sharia compliant, Islamic compliant, and the rest of them are communist. It should be designated a terrorist organization, quite frankly. I agree 100% that we should pull out. Now, somebody has asked me, this is a good question. Do you ever expect that Quebec would sign off on Section 59 and consequently Section 23 of the Charter? Can they even do that? Andre's asking that question. Can they sign off of Section 59 and then consequentially Section 23 of the Charter? They haven't specified which ones those are.
Okay.
I'm just sorry. There's a lot of questions that come in, so it's hard to.
Oh yeah, no. Well, Section 23 talks about citizens of Canada being understood as that as English or French linguistic minority population and so on. Yeah. This is the minority language rights thing. This is what we were one of the big debating points. Quebec hasn't even signed on to the Constitution. So that answers that. But interestingly enough, and they didn't, we still had enough under the decision that was made in 1982 when Trudeau lost. In order to change the Constitution, you must have 7, a majority, and the amending formulator says, right, 7 provinces representing 50% plus of the population as then known, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's how we got what we got now. Quebec never signed on. Quebec and New Brunswick and Ontario did, by the way. They signed on as the federal government, but the only province that didn't was Quebec. So Quebec's role in trying to do anything now still has to be through the amending formula. It has 7 provinces and 50% of the population. Otherwise, it can't be done.
Yeah, that would be quite a task, but I'm sure if we get the right people into office, it could be done.
The Constitution is to be permanent, right, and made difficult to change so that you have some permanence and continuity to your nation. Otherwise, it's mob rule. Right?
Yeah, well,
you can't operate if you're going to be changing the Constitution every day. That's the whole idea of the Constitution.
No, and it has to be interpreted properly, and thank God you're here.
And then, of course, you've got to make sure that it's interpreted properly. And that's where we are today. It is being completely abused by those who want to see a secular nation.
And that's why, again, it's so important to have you on the show. Somebody has asked, can you explain why members of Parliament here in Canada can be citizens of other countries while serving in the Canadian government? Is this not a conflict of interest? And I mean, we have actual terrorists, 100%. I won't name them, sitting as MPs and even as very high-ranking officials as ministers.
But it gets worse than that, because I just put on my blog today, the Prime Minister of this country has violated the Conflict of Interest Act 5 times, and he's still Prime Minister, and he still sits as an MP. And nobody will do anything about it, not even the Conservatives. They won't change that. I've written them all. Now all you got to do is make an amendment to the Conflict of Interest Act whereby any MP who violates the law cannot serve as an MP. That's all you got to do. You know, it's very simple. It can be done in 2 or 3 days. All of these things where it can be proven, where people's position is influencing their actions in the government or in the parliament, can be challenged. Absolutely. Can be challenged. The problem we got in Canada right now is nobody wants to challenge anything. Everybody's letting everything go.
Mm-hmm.
And when Mr. Polyev gets up and talks about, I'm going to have a non-confidence motion where I'm going to show how the socialist leader contradicted himself, that's not the way to go about a non-confidence motion. What Mr. Polyev should be doing, and all the rest of Canadians, is what are you doing to make sure your parliament is honest? Because I can find words that Polyev said 5 years ago which contradict what he's saying now. We can get into that little game. That's like Junior Red Cross debates when I was in grade 8. But where the rubber hits the road is having an honest parliament. And right now we don't have an honest parliament because an MP can break the law and make the law. You can be a lawbreaker and a lawmaker all at the same time in this country. You can't do that anywhere else in a democracy.
So as long as he has support from Jagmeet Singh until he gets his hefty pension there in February, what could Pierre Poilievre or anyone else actually do? Because Arif Irani is the Attorney General. He's an Ismaili Muslim. He is so deep into this, I believe, to push his own agenda. He's not a born and raised Canadian citizen.
But you do it through what you know is totally dishonest right now. I mean, you're allowed to be, regardless of what your religion is, you're allowed to serve in the parliament or in the legislature. But this is where I think we lose our focus. Our focus should be, is the Parliament of Canada an integral, honest place today? No, because MPs can serve there as the PM is doing and break the law. So the way for Polyev to do it is to not go after things which may or may not work out in the long term constitutionally. Where he should do is where we know the conflict of interest ethics commissioner has ruled 5 times that the Prime Minister broke the law. The Parliament and the people of Canada should be asking for his resignation because demanding it, or just amending the Conflict of Interest Act that's already in place. Because right now, all he's got to do is pay a fine of $500.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. I was reading that the other day, and I thought that's nothing.
That's only if the commissioner rules demands it of him.
That's a penny.
Mr. Morneau, when he was Minister of Finance. So we don't have to go any further than our own people. We got to get our parliament to be honest to start with, and we're not. And that, by the way, true in the legislatures too. They all have conflict of interest act, which is all loopholes in them. So the first thing we got to do is make our parliament honest. Right now, it's not honest.
Okay, so
if Jesus came back tomorrow, he would condemn all of the parliaments of Canada.
I agree. And boy,
if Jesus came back tomorrow, he would condemn all of the parliaments of Canada because they're dishonest.
The lying and dishonesty, the robbery, the theft, the cheating, the murder that's going on in Canada right now based on the people that are in these trusted positions. They're going to have a lot to answer for. And, that's why 2 Chronicles talks about a nation, if my people who are called on my name will humble themselves and pray and repent, like sincerely repent.
Exactly.
It's only then that God will heal our land. So I encourage.
And by the way, I mean, to your viewers out there, I hate to say this because I was, I supported the Conservative Party of Canada all my life. Okay, up until 3 or 4 years ago. But during the last Conservative Convention, National Convention, Conservative Party of Canada, they had an opportunity. Some local district association, I don't know if it was through reading my stuff or somebody else's stuff, it doesn't make any difference. They proposed to amend the Conflict of Interest Act, whereby MPs who break the law should not be able to serve in the end. And it got turned down. And they came up with a watered down resolution which said we'll give all the MPs at least 3 chances. They can break the law 3 times. So that was the resolution that they passed. An MP could break the law, right?
Yeah.
But he can get a second chance and a third chance. Then after the third chance, then they would take a look at what they would do, whether he should stay in the parliament or not.
Mm-hmm.
What an awful thing to, right? This is Christianity. This is honesty. And so, and I've written them, Mr. Polyev, he's never ever answered me back. I've written them, and I've written the other leaders as well, and said, will you agree to do the following? Go in the House of Commons when it opens tomorrow and make an amendment. This would really embarrass Trudeau. This is why I said today in my blog, here's the resolution that you need, the non-conference resolution you need to do next week. Whereas Trudeau has broken the conflict of interest law, section 2, right? Section 9, section 11, section 21, I go through it all. Be it therefore resolved that this House of Commons go on record of having no confidence in the leader of the government or the party that he leads. In other words, therefore, the government would fall because you're not going to do anything. You're not going to pass anything anymore like they're doing in France today. That's all they got to do. Now, let the Liberal Party and the other parties decide how they want to vote on that. Then we will all know for sure. That's why I went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada with my case. Many people said, why are you going? You already lost twice. Why are you going the third time? Because I wanted to be able to say tonight on this program and other programs, I did all I could. I went as far as I could go, right? And now I know how the courts really feel. Somebody could have said to me, well, you never took it to the Supreme Court of Canada, so you don't know what they would do. And I took it to the Supreme Court of Canada, and they did the same thing as the other 2 courts. That's what Polyev needs to do. That's what any leader now who's really in favor of honesty and Christianity and all the rest of it, that's what they need to do. They need to put all the other leaders on notice in the House of Commons. Are you for honesty or are you not? And then we will know.
I love it. I admire you so much. And, you could be retired, you could be in Hawaii right now, but you're here, you're working hard, you're sticking with us Canadians. And it's shameful the direction the Conservative parties are going. Most of our members know the position I hold on that. But 9.5 years, I tried 9.5 years ago, I started to try to work with the Conservative Party, with Andrew Scheer. It was a complete and utter disappointment. He would never talk about critical issues, the legalization of marijuana, the global compact on migration. It wasn't until he was really pressured that he'd come the 11th hour and say something on it. Then came in Aaron O'Toole, and I would write them and say, you owe your members their money back because you're in breach of your policies and to traditional values. They voted in same-sex marriage, and they just kept going down further and further. And I had the most wonderful meeting with Maxime Bernier, a private meeting with him on Sunday night. And we had just a great conversation. We talked some strategy. I shared some information with him that he was unaware of. And at the event he was speaking at as well, he said, the Conservatives are going to win in a landslide, but now is the time to elect some PPC candidates because this is the populist movement. This is sort of that Christian nationalist movement that's been winning.
Absolutely. I'm a member of the PPC,
countries, right?
by the way.
Hey, there you go. Well done. But this is how we're going to win, right? This is where it starts.
Yeah,
and we got to get a couple
right?
seats. We got to get them a couple of seats because they
the
truly are on
leader.
our side.
Bernier is the only leader that was arrested for standing up for the Charter rights and freedoms.
Absolutely.
On a pasture in Manitoba. That's what we should all be celebrating, is that we have a leader still alive in an organized, legitimate political party that stood up for the rights of individual Canadians. It was Mr. Bernier, and only Mr. Bernier. And he went to court. He went to jail.
Yeah.
To get bail, to get out.
No, and I met with him in 2018 for the first time and had a meeting with him in Ottawa. And I sat down and I brought these files with me, one on abortion, one on the radical LGBTQ, the other on Islam, and the other on the military and police and how they are being underfunded and understaffed, intentionally, of course, right? So we don't have a real defense system. And it was over the years I would bump into him here and there, and we built our friendship and our working relationship. And he came to me one day and he said, "Thank you so much." And I said, "For what?" And he said, "Back in 2019 in March," he said, "when you came, I was so focused on finances that he didn't see all these social agendas going on."
Right, right,
And
right.
so it was a real wake-up call to that being the direction. And so he's not like existing political leaders who
No,
saw it and said nothing. He
right.
saw it, he saw the travesty,
Yeah.
and he ended up making it, all of them, his number one speaking points. And so I have so much respect for him.
And he's the only leader who, if you go into his website, PPC website, all available for anyone to go into, produces the expenses and revenue of his party and how much they're paying him is all open and transparent. No other party, no other federal party does that.
No. And I know that, because the economy is hard, people are having a difficult time even supporting the PPC, but I'd encourage them to do so because this party needs to build, it needs to grow. Once we get, a few people in, there will be a landslide in the 2029 election. And that's the strategic way you have to look at this, other than a complete miracle from God for 2025, for Maxime to get in and do a win. We look at 2029. And
no, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. You
Yeah.
got to build, and you got to build strong. And he's the only person and the only party around that stands for basic principles that you and I and everybody else knows will continue to make this country and to be proud of this country and to be a super country. You can't do it otherwise. And
No.
the Bernier and the PPC platform that's necessary, no question.
Good. Well, in closing, I'm going to ask one good question Moira had left, and then we'll sign off. But what I'm thinking is you need to be a regular. You need to come on to the Empower Hour and visit us more often because this is just such an engaging conversation. There's lots of issues. I would have liked to have talked about the natives and how that is aligned with Christianity in this nation, the immigration issue. There's so many topics we could talk on. So I'm going to have you back on. But Moira asks what is one most important and crucial action each Canadian citizen needs to do now in order to save the Judeo-Christian framework?
If you had to do one thing, it would be what I just talked about, trying to make your parliament honest and exposing your MP, writing your MP today and saying, why won't you and your party support an amendment to the conflict of interest legislation, which means that if you're found to be guilty of breaking our law, you cannot serve as an MP. That alone will establish an honesty which we don't have right now, and do it for all for your legislature as well.
Excellent.
I suggested this to John Rustad 6 months ago because
Excellent.
I went through the conflict of interest legislation in BC and found where the commissioner could actually be the one that decide whether they were going to recommend a member, not a commissioner, not somebody elected. The commissioner, when it should be automatic in the law, which says that if you break it, you can't serve anymore. How can you serve in the legislature or in a democratic parliament if you just broke one of the laws of that parliament?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean, it's insanity.
It is. It's a shocking state that we're at. But you know what? We're working on changing it. And if we have to do it one person at a time, one of the other ways I suggest that Canadians can do it is by sharing this incredible interview with Honorable Peckford. This has been just incredible information. You are, as I said, a wealth of information. You were there. You know what you're talking about. I wish that Pierre Poilievre would take you on as one of his advisors. That would have showed an intelligent man. But, the reasons why he wouldn't do that, you could add so much and give advice that would be completely profitable.
Just to your viewers, go into www.peckford42.wordpress.com, and my last article that I've got on there, so you don't have to search through thousands of articles. I've got almost 10,000 articles written, by the way, on that blog since 2015. But the last article, so it's easy to find, there is the answer for that last person who asked that question. I actually got the resolution prepared, and it's right there on my blog for them to read and to copy.
Thank you for bringing that up, because we're going to have your blog in the description of this video. So when people share it, you can go to this description as well. We will include it there if you didn't have time to write that down. Terenzio there it is. Terenzio is right ahead of us there, bringing it up.
Just go down through it. And I try to keep my articles short. Just look at that. That was pretty short, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just go back again. Just go back. It was just a few lines. These are other articles you've gone down to now.
Yeah. Head up a little bit there, Terenzio.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say how short it is, but it's to the point, and it's talking about honesty.
Honesty and integrity. Foundational.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You've got the word. You've got the word. It's basic, it's foundational, and it's what the Lord wants us to do.
Absolutely. That's if we're looking at our elected officials, the other thing we need to do, I says, always know who your elected official is. Don't just listen to what they say. Get to know their character. Are they living out what they're speaking? And know where they stand.
Really good point.
Know where they stand on these critical issues, and then vote for them. Don't just then vote for them. Get out there and help get them elected.
Exactly.
All right. Well, sir, thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to having you on the show again. God bless you.
God bless you, and a Merry, Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas. Fantastic. Wow. I could go on for 2 hours talking with Honorable Peckford. I'm very serious. We're going to have him back on the show again. The emphasis tonight was on the fact that Canada is a Christian nation, and that is central and vital to us winning this spiritual battle over our country. In every nation, as I said, nothing is new under the sun. This has happened throughout centuries, is that evil governments would rise up, and actually God appoints governments. God appointed Justin Trudeau. If he didn't want him in there, he wouldn't have allowed him to become prime minister 3 times. He got elected. And the reason is because God loves us so much, he's willing to let us suffer so that we will repent and get right with him, rather than live a life of debauchery and evil and a sinful life and end up literally going to hell. So God is giving us, it's not Klaus Schwab's Great Reset, it's God's Great Reset. So let's take advantage of the grace that God is showing us right now, and let's get right with him. Let's continue to push forward in this fight. Action for Canada is filing our new notice of civil claim. I'm so excited about that. There's reasons, very good reasons. I hope you trust that when we say reasons for our delays, but we're going to go full force. And there were additional costs that we had to pay, expenses, court expenses that are on top of what you pay a lawyer when you start an action. Honorable Peckford would have gone through that. Maxime Bernier did. They went and raised additional funds for their ongoing court actions. But because Action for Canada was so smeared by those individuals such as Kip Warner and others, it really affected our fundraising. And so I'm so grateful for everybody that donates to Action for Canada, because I'm very wise with the funds. We are spending within our means, and I kept a little war chest as far as our legal fund was concerned. But we need to raise more funds in order to pay for the additional costs and things that happen into the future. Plus, additional actions we're limited from taking in challenging, for instance, what Mr. Peckford was talking about, Supreme Court rulings that said, you know what, it was never decided which God was talking about, so everything goes. No, it's very important for Supreme Court rulings to recognize the supremacy of the one and only God to a Christian society like our own. And you can see how that needs to be the way all of Canada is governed. Otherwise, all of these other cultures that are coming into Canada and trying to take over are asserting their small gods based on a small God and their evil entities. And like I said, there's good people that live in all of these other countries, and they so wish to come to Canada. And we see the belief system they're living under. It's not working out too well. And Canada and all Western Christian nations were really the place to be if you wanted freedom and democracy. So keep that in mind. Please consider donating to Action for Canada. I know we're a not-for-profit organization, and a lot of people in December want to focus on charitable organizations because they want their tax receipt. But Action for Canada will never last as a charitable organization. So we're being hit by dissenters who are paid by the government to try to make people question Action for Canada. And so then as well, because we're not a charitable organization and people will not donate. So I'm asking you then, you know what, keep a portion of your funds and donate to Action for Canada for the rest of it. I think I'm rambling, but I'm just trying to help you to understand where we're at and our appeal to you, and doubly extra special why I absolutely want to thank everybody who has been faithful to donate to Action for Canada, because I understand that you could be getting that tax receipt or doing it in another way, but you are faithful to the work that we are doing and you see the success and all we're accomplishing. So thank you so much. All right. Next, I'm going to the weekly news update. I have a lot of important information, so stay with us. Thanks so much.
Hi, this is Action for Canada's Prepper Dan to let you know that we have partnered up with Rainbow Seeds once again to offer you incredible deals this fall, which is the best time of year to order your garden and flower seeds. Rainbow Seeds offers variety packs of seeds, usually comprising of 10 or more packages in each package. Be it for vegetables or herbs or teas, these offer an incredible value for your dollar. Now, if tomatoes is your thing, Rainbow Seeds offers 43 different varieties. Beans, 34 different varieties. If carrots is your thing, they offer 14 different varieties, 16 of corn. Cucumbers, 14. What about lettuce? 39 different varieties. At Rainbow Seeds, there is no shortage of different varieties of all kinds of vegetables. They even offer fruit. All Rainbow Seeds are non-GMO, guaranteed to sprout within 60 days upon delivery, and they carry many heirloom varieties. Not sure what to get for the avid gardener in your home or your family? Gift certificates are available in the amounts of $10, $25, or $50. But that's not all. Free shipping is available on all orders over $50 anywhere in the USA or Canada. But there's more. Enter the code ACTION20 in the coupon box at checkout and get 20% off your total order. What a deal! Now is the time to get those perfect gifts that keeps on giving for the next year. Find Rainbow Seed online at rainbowseed.ca, or you can find them at Rainbow Seeds New Brunswick on Facebook. Now's the time to prepare for your growing season next year and get rid of the winter blues before they even come. And on that note, happy shopping and happy gardening.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you. Welcome. It's December 4th. It's December, weeks before Christmas, and the year has just gone by so fast. We had Honorable Brian Peckford on tonight. I really encourage you to watch the Empower Hour. It will be available in the description below. Next week, I will be the special guest on the Empower Hour, and I'm going to be talking about Action for Canada wins and our year in review. And so that will be, I think, very encouraging to Canadians. Like, we are really making some tremendous advancements. All right, so this is the weekly news update. As I said, it's December 4th, so I'm just going to start with by sharing my screen. Give me 1 second. Here we are, and how's that looking? Okay, so for you, those of you who are new, this is what Action for Canada looks like nationwide. We just encourage you to follow us. If you haven't signed up already, please do so. Join Action for Canada, join a local chapter. If you don't have one near you, I would even encourage you to sign up with the chapter that's nearest to you. You can email them, get involved, and maybe by attending some of their online meetings or engaging with the chapter leader, you may get some information, get a few friends together, and decide to run a chapter yourself, because we have amazing campaigns and strategies going on in communities across the nation. All right, again, here's my Twitter account. I just bring it up for fun every week. I've been enjoying this. Look at this, 2,384. The other day it was up to 2,397, and I just go right back down again. I don't get it. I've never seen anything like this for somebody that's been in this game for 9.5 years to hardly reach 2,400 with such a fight. But that's okay. That means Action for Canada is doing really, really good work. We're a threat to some people. I would think Elon Musk, I would think X would be the best platform. It's the only one that's really not, I thought wasn't censoring me, but yeah, there's just no gain there. So if you can help me out, or even if you're somebody that's an X expert, send me some information on call2@actionforcanada.com and tell me how we can get our information out, because yeah, it gets a little frustrating when we're doing, I mean, I think I worked 11 hours yesterday on an action that I'll be talking about tonight. And then, we're going to send it out to the masses. We have a huge email list. And then sometimes I'm like, are they blocking the Gmail accounts? Is it all going to people's spam? Are they checking their spam? Because I can't be on YouTube. We can't, it's terribly censored on Facebook. And, but that's like a badge of honor that the Action for Canada team is wearing right now. So how we're getting our information out is we have these wonderful chapter leader meetings every single Monday. And when we commence an action, they go out nationwide. The government can't stop us because these are in-person Zoom meetings where we're seeing each other, face to face, and we're saying, yeah, we acknowledge we're getting this. Thanks for the campaign. We're going to put that strategy in action. And then our people are getting it out at the community level in person meetings. And so it's just fabulous. I think it is the best strategy of war going on in this country. We just need more people learning about it and more people joining us, because that's how we win elections as well. We could win all community elections, like I'm talking local government, provincial elections and federal elections, because these local communities could really build in number. And then what we would find is that we would go door knocking and do all sorts of great things and get our people elected. Okay, so one of the great things, an action we did this week, and great news, I've been talking to you about what's going on in the Winnipeg metropolitan region. And I didn't realize, I don't know that I announced this last week, because I was talking to Pierre and I said, Pierre, whatever happened with that event that was that second public meeting that was supposed to take place? And he's like, they gave up on it because we had so many people. They just couldn't find a location large enough. And the WMR, the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region, was sort of put together by the Manitoba government so that they could take over the 18 I call them municipalities. They're called a little something different. Sorry, MBs. I can't remember right now. I'll call them municipalities. And, to take away the voice of our elected officials representing us, the power of them. Anyways, Pierre's doing a massive job there. I keep talking about it, and I want to just keep encouraging people that Action for Canada's 15-minute city campaigns and strategies are working, but it only works when people show up and support our chapter leaders. Sometimes we have chapter leaders with 5 people that show up, and they can do a lot, they can achieve good things, but nothing compared to what can be achieved if we have hundreds of people showing up, 1,000 people showing up, like what happened with Pierre. And so I just really encourage you. I'm just going to keep driving it down there. We need you. You can't stay home. We all want to be out Christmas shopping and getting things for, our family. I've got my tree sitting right here. It's a fake tree. And I hauled it out of the crawl space at least a week ago. So it sat in the bag on the floor for a week, and then I don't know, maybe it's got to be over a week. And then I set it up, and there it is, just waiting for me to put the lights and everything on. I don't know. It might be tonight. I just need the energy to do it. I'm so tired. And yet I can't stop fighting. But that's what I'm saying. Like there's those of us on the Action for Canada team that are sacrificially giving of our time. And we're just asking for your support in return by showing up at a few events once in a while. It would mean so much to us. And you know what? Take a chapter leader out for coffee. Take them out for lunch and wish them a Merry Christmas, that you really appreciate what they're doing. That's something I want to really encourage as well, because they don't get paid. Action for Canada, I say we're a multi-million-dollar organization if we had the funds coming in for the work we're doing. If you compared us to those radical trans LGBTQ NGOs that are getting paid billions of dollars from the government, tax dollars, your tax dollars, and Action for Canada, I think it was somewhere around $390,000 that we gratefully brought in last year. But the majority of the money, right, goes towards our tech and keeping the organization running and going, as well as printing materials. And so you could do so much at the community level by making sure you're donating to the printed materials that are, they raise the funding at the community level, and then we're advising parents of the horrible things that are going on inside the schools with the SOGI 123 or Win Sex Ed flyers. And with the 15-minute city flyers, our chapters are going door to door and putting them in people's mailboxes. We need people showing up at city meetings and school board meetings, and this is the way that we're doing it. We're placing these truth bombs in just the right places. But anyways, support us. Come out and support a chapter leader today. Consider becoming a chapter leader. It would be great. Okay, as I mentioned, we had Honorable Brian Peckford on the show because I think it's extremely important to continue to emphasize that Canada is a Christian nation. All of our freedoms and democracies completely rests on it. And you can go look at all other nations built on other faith systems, and every single one are living under oppression and tyranny. And as we've removed God, we've got a tyrannical government. And I keep saying, pick a side. You don't have to be a Christian to live in Canada to enjoy the Christian biblical principles. But if you don't like the way things are going under multiculturalism, secularism, and a post-national state, that it seems like the choice is pretty simple. And BC government cites Christmas as a reason to deny Christian Heritage Month. Now, I love it that people have gone out and they're proclaiming they're wanting a Christian Heritage Month because, like, April is Sikh Heritage Month, which is nonsense, and October, November is Muslim Month, which is total nonsense. This is Canada, all right? If you want to celebrate Islam, go to 56 Islamic majority countries, because it ain't working so well there, and we don't want to celebrate it here, and it shouldn't. It's not a Christian principle. You don't align with our Christian biblical principles, so why is there a month to celebrate anti-Christian principles? It's really odd what's gone on in Canada and what we've let people get away with. And then there's Sikh month. Although there's very nice Sikh people, Hindus in my neighborhood, my neighbors out back, super duper nice. Although they've been in Canada probably 28 years and they hardly speak English, which that's a problem. You know, I could see if they were 80 and they moved to Canada, I wouldn't expect them to speak English, but we have to bring a government in that's going to mandate everybody speak English or French. Okay, one of the two official languages. That's just it. So, Christian cities across Canada are recognizing Christian Heritage Month. The only problem with that is this is a Christian nation. Every day is Christian Day. All right. So, but it's a good start. And the fact that BC, radical socialist BC, would try to deny it is no surprise. And that's why I need people to help me on this committee. Thank you to the one lady that reached out to me. She's going to be helping me on this committee to expose the corruption that took place in the BC NDP election. They stole the election. And you may be having this going on in other provinces. So you need to be demanding right now with a team and a committee that the provincial commission, elections commission, whoever that is, that they put mandates in place that prohibit the voting machines, and as well whatever else it is, that no vouching. I've got a few things on our list that we're going to be expressing as well. But in BC, there has to be a re-election to address these things. But you just can't say, oh, well, it's bigger than me. You have to be involved in bringing about the change. Get involved in the local associations before the next election so you can say who the candidate will be in your riding. These are very important steps to take. Okay, I'm just going to play this. We were talking about Canada being a Christian nation, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on with the rise of the Native activism in Canada. It is getting way out of hand, but so it's meant to be. I really appreciate Douglas Murray. He is an investigative reporter in the UK. He does a great job. And so I'm just going to play this short clip, and it had to do with all this, whether it's in New Zealand with the Maoris, so-called indigenous in Western, other nations, America and Canada, Aborigines in Australia. No matter what it is, he just brings a little bit of reality to what people were facing when they entered these countries and the natives, were in the land. So here we go.
I'm sorry. Who were the Maoris historically? Were they men and women of peace who sat around idyllically farming and having an Edenically civilized life? Or were they brutal, brutal people who did terrible things to each other and to people they met? The trade in decapitated human heads as a tool of bartering to buy goods, including muskets, by the early 1800s. I'm sorry, I'm not willing to have my own culture ransacked and turned through this lens of pure evil, and simultaneously be expected to pretend that the Maoris or the indigenous people of Australia were these proto-Gandhi-esque figures, sort of Mother Teresa with a bit too much beheading. No, this is totally untrue. And it's an obvious attempt to subjugate people in the West to a false ideology and a false version of our own past. So no, I mean, all of the sort of, the combination of the two of these things, the wild distortion of Western history, the negative interpretation of all of Western history, is bad on its own, but combined with this Edenic, Vaseline-lensed interpretation of everyone else, no, you might just about get away with one of those things, but not both, and not both at the same time. No way.
All right. So, as we know, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum are working to destroy, annihilate, sovereignty in Western Christian European nations. And one of the means of how they're going about that is through the diversity, equity, inclusion, critical race theory, white supremacy, colonialism, victimizing the natives. It's interesting that through none of this are they ever going after the Muslims. I've repeated this, but because I feel a real need that we have to make sure that we're asking the right questions. How serious is the United Nations about this colonialism? Why is it that they're not persecuting Muslims and telling them that they need to pay reparations to the Christians, where they came into these countries and literally slaughtered them? And when the Europeans came to Canada, they did not come in slaughtering the natives. In fact, it was quite the opposite. And as I showed you, I believe last week or the week before, we have to, be willing to learn the facts and look outside of what it is that the government has been pushing on us, I would say for a decade, but since Trudeau came in, he has really ramped up the United Nations campaign to destabilize Canada using the natives. He came in all about they changed it from Indians to natives to Indigenous to Aboriginals, whatever it is. All right, just put all that aside and ask yourself the question, have the Liberals done anything that really showed they cared about the Indigenous people? Have they made their lives better? No, they've enriched a lot of corrupt chiefs, not all of them, but a lot of them. There are Native activists, many of whom are not even Native. We'll get to that. They're Pretendians. They're non-Natives. They're faking it, like Randy Boissonnault, so that he could sign on to the COVID deal to run his business and get money from the government. Complete frauds, liars, and cheats. And so we'll dive into that a little bit more. But this is a book, and it's an account, a historical, true fact account of in 1803 when John R. Jewett had come to Canada, and 25 of his of those on the ship with him had been beheaded. And then they lined up, the Nootka Indians had beheaded all of them except for him and one other gentleman who became their slaves. And every day they were concerned about their life and if they would survive this. There are many stories. Remember, there were 640 tribes, over 640 tribes in Canada. There was no unification. They were all fighting over land. There was scalping. There was poverty. There was all kinds of, it was hard to live on the land in Canada. And at some point they had immigrated to Canada as well. And the Europeans came to Canada. It was hard living off the land, as you can imagine, in the vast nature that we have here. And then think about those who traversed from the East Coast to the West Coast as well, and the types of things that they would have to overcome. All right, so this is an action that I will be launching. We had Michelle Sterling on recently to talk about Sugarcane, the documentary that is going to be coming out on December 9th through National Geographic, Disney Plus, and Hulu. Now, they never did any research, but I'm telling you that Michelle Sterling sure did, because she proved that sugarcane is based on lies. There were some truths, like a Native lady had a baby. She was not raped by a priest. It was actually the man that she was with was Native, and she put the baby in a burner. It was not and it was not a priest or the church or the school that put it in an incinerator. There were no incinerators. It was a milkman that rescued the baby. There are so many lies in sugarcane, and they went worldwide to promote this fake documentary. And basically, it's a blood libel against the Catholic Church and Canadian history. So now countries around the world who have seen this documentary are strategically, this is what Trudeau and the United Nations are conspiring on, are framing Canada as a genocidal nation. The other person I want to discuss this action, so it's going to be, the action will be to repeal UNDRIP, ban sugarcane, and commence an investigation against several people. So I have just a small overview here at the beginning, and I'm asking you to copy and paste these emails. It's really easy. You just copy them, pop them into your email, and then you would go and copy this email. You just scroll down, copy it, and throw it into your email as well. But the other person of interest here is Kimberly Murray, and she's a possible pretendian. When you go into this link and the research that has been done on her, her mother was was Irish. She actually her mother came to Canada, I think, I want to say when she was 8 years old or so. You have to go into the document and see it. And then it goes into detail who her father was, and they're not Native, and nor were her grandparents. And so it's getting very disturbing, and I've got to say a little frustrating to find out how many people are on the front line of this Indigenous rights issue and these reparations and these massive payouts who are not even Native, who had never attended an Indigenous school. And Kimberly Murray herself admits she spent summers, I believe it was, down in California. And the people that know the majority of Natives in Canada didn't go down on holidays, spending their time in California. So what she has done is she's taken this Indigenous-led reparations framework for missing and disappeared children and unmarked burials without any proof whatsoever. This report has come out, and there isn't any evidence, not provided any list of missing or disappeared, that's a new phrase, children after 113 years of Indian residential schools. And as you know, I've reported previously, and it's a fact, I get hate mail over this, that I'm saying the burial graves, they're empty. And that the diseases that the natives had to address, like tuberculosis, the Europeans had to face, and there's massive deaths within the European community as well. So it's time and time and time for Canadians to start taking a step back. Your knee-jerk reaction has been to even persecute people like myself or Michelle Sterling. There's a former judge, Mr. Giesbrecht, who is coming out, Brian Giesbrecht and others. There are so many people coming out now supporting historical documents, proving that yes, there may have been some abuse at the schools, as there are in so many ranging, not saying this didn't happen, but whatever happened 150 years ago, I didn't take any part in. Nor did my parents or your parents. And in fact, what's coming out now is more and more reports about how loving the people who were in the schools taking care of the children were. I was listening to, it was the first time I've heard of these two gentlemen who've written a book. And this one individual, he's got to be in his late 70s or so. He actually attended the schools because his dad was a pastor, and his dad decided to be a principal of two of the schools, and he couldn't believe any of this, how it was, how people were being maligned once this started coming out about the abuse that took place in these schools. He was real immersed in the schools and never saw any part of it. And so can you imagine how dishonorable it is to the individual? He said there was 3 young girls, they were all sisters, who were orphans. They had no parents, probably died of TB, and they were kept in the schools like throughout the summers when the schools should have been closed, as these people took care of them and they loved on them. And there needs to be a proper balance. As I've mentioned previously, I know people personally from Europe who were abused in, situations. We had a teacher at school, I've got a twin brother, And I remember the teacher striking my brother in the school. They used the ruler, they used the strap at school when I was young. I never got it. Just saying, I never got it. I was good. But you know what? That was there. It was, I can tell you, Billy got it. He was one of the kids in the school in my classroom, and he was just that little troublemaker, you know. But this just happens to be a fact of the day, and we have to put everything properly in perspective. Another problem within the document that I added today, it'll hopefully come out tomorrow, is Gary Anadasanagari. He's the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. He's from Sri Lanka. Okay, he came from Sri Lanka when he was 8 years old, and we're going to take a look at who this individual is now, and he's the Minister of Crown Indigenous Affairs, Relations. Here he is, and prior to being an MP, he was the chair of the Canadian Tamil Youth Development Centre, president of the Canadian Tamils Chamber of Commerce, and counsel to the Canadian Tamil Congress. So I was looking at this, and it's not the Tamil Tigers, but isn't that the same? And it's, yeah, in Sri Lanka, there were the Tamil Tigers. So I start to dive into it a little bit more. But first it goes, here he is. He's been Crown Indigenous Relations is more than just apologies. It's about setting the record straight. He's the embodiment of the Crown, which means Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary, I'm sorry, I can't say his last name right, and I don't want to disrespect him, is the unlikely face of white colonialism in Canada. I'm already offended. And he goes, or at least its historical legacy. Like any other Canadian, he may not be personally responsible for the sins of Canada's past. Today, however, the minister is politically accountable for solutions of the future. As a Tamil immigrant from Sri Lanka, also colonized by the British Crown, he is especially conscious of the colonial history that touches all Canadians. As a human rights lawyer and community activist in his previous life, he had been thinking about it since long before he entered politics decades ago. So let's go a little bit deeper. There are reports, and I'm encouraging others to investigate this. I certainly will be investigating it further, which is questioning his ties to Tamil Tigers funding and support. On July 17th, Gary attended book launch on Prabhakaran in Scarborough together with this fella David, and this fella is tied to the Tamil Tigers. Gary was part of events marking the death of same individual. The LTTT, which is this terrorist organization, is noted by AP journalist on the 13th. So Gary's in defense of it. And so the more I was looking into this, I'm like, is this for real? Like, is this who is in the Liberal Party and is representing the natives? Okay, so is counsel to CTC. He's a lawyer, and he worked something to do with the United Nations. And as well, so he's counsel to the CTC, which is a designated terrorist entity. So my suspicions, I'm not saying that he's a terrorist, but I'm like, okay, why would we have somebody with all these terrorist connections as a minister in the Liberal Party? And he's not even born and raised in Canada, and he doesn't embrace our Christian principles. So calling it the leading fundraiser in Canada for the Tamil Tigers. So this was that, I believe, the CLT. The federal government has listed the World Tamil Movement as a terrorist organization. So it's just some red flags for me. But getting to the point of it is that he made this huge apology for something that didn't even happen. It didn't take place. And it had to do with natives in the United States that are coming into Winnipeg and claiming land, and that they were actually being in the wars in America were different with the natives than they were in Canada. We didn't have wars with them where they were slaughtering one another, but some of that went on in the US, and the natives would come up into Canada to seek refuge. And this one particular group of natives who had come into Canada had actually slaughtered a bunch of innocent European families because they said, well, we better take care of the problem now because these British, oh, they were British colonists. Sorry, I should refer to it that way, I believe. And rather than them increase, we may as well just slaughter them now. Well, anyways, in the long run, they were assisted with refugee, and clearly Britain and Canada had a rule of law that would never have honored or recognized incoming refugees as citizens who had brutally violated and murdered women and children, no matter how provoked they were. So they were granted asylum. And now this minister is treating them as if they were citizens. So what's next? Are there going to be reparations? They came here as refugees and they didn't expect any land entitlements, but now they're trying to claim that. This was just the information about this gentleman. As I say, I'll skip through a little bit of what I just covered. And so now the minister and President Chartrand are to sign a historical self-government treaty with the natives. This was November 30th of this year. Do you see what's going on behind our backs? They are using the natives to advance this very aggressive global agenda to undermine our sovereignty and claim Canadians are on stolen land. We're not on stolen land. We came in peacefully and we created a commonwealth. The 640 tribes were infighting and there was not unity. They did not, it was not in many, majority of the tribes, it was not civilized. And so the Europeans came in and blessed us with an incredible nation that prospered. And I am not going to acknowledge land rights. I'm not going to fall into any more of this. This is to our demise. Okay, minister apologizes for government's handling of First Nations money in 1800s. In 1800s, okay? Like I said, this has got to stop. Last week, I had reported on how we apologized for 1,000 dogs that were killed 150 years ago. And now, granted, that would be hard because that's how natives, the Indians got around at that time. But then it came in about how the dogs had, somebody can remind me. I'm not looking at the chat right now. Never mind. Anyways, there was it's a typical disease that dogs have. And the dogs, as you know, you see them on the reserves now, are walking around free and live. And they had attacked some children and killed them. And so they came in and the RCMP slaughtered the dogs. They put them down. And so there's so many things that they'd already been given something like $1.5 million back in 2013 by the provincial government. Now the federal government is finding anything and everything they can, and it's just got to stop. It's exhausting. There's lots of people who have been harmed in Canada. It's not just the natives around the world that have suffered just grotesque things after enduring war and other things. I would encourage you to follow and subscribe to Michelle Sterling on Substack. This lady knows how to do her research. She provides evidence. And so she has done an excerpt here, a report, an in-depth report on this ridiculous post that Minister Gary had put, when was that? That was not too long ago. He says, for too long, Canada failed to recognize the 9 Dakota and Lakota First Nations as Aboriginal peoples of Canada with constitutionally protected rights. These are the ones I'm just talking about who were American and came and escaped to Canada to get away from the fighting, that they came here for refuge. Okay. And they said, we have no claim to land. They said that. It's even, and Michelle, she provides all of the evidence. So, contrary to the minister's apology, the incoming American Indians, who were said to be allies of the British, were not betrayed. They were assisted with refuge, and clearly Britain and Canada had a rule of law that would have never honored or recognized incoming refugees as citizens who had brutally violated and murdered women and children, no matter what provoked these attacks. So facts matter. The truth matters. So what's going on, Honorable Gary? Like, I don't get it. What are you trying to prove here? You're trying to frame us as this horrific genocidal nation for what purpose other than to facilitate a foreign body from infiltrating Canada and taking over our land and our resources. That's what this is all about. This is treason. Okay, so this is brand new. Private land in New Brunswick subject to Indigenous title claim after Canadian court ruling. A New Brunswick court has ruled that Aboriginal, now it's Aboriginal, Natives, Indians, Aboriginal title, or the legal means by which Indigenous people claim property can be used on privately held land in the Canadian province if Indigenous nations go through the movement to do so. The court decided the ruling earlier this month, and it may set the precedent of Aboriginal title being used to challenge the legal standing of property owned by corporations. You can see where this is going as well. I hope you are getting a clear picture of what is happening right under your noses. Be very careful. This is from Exodus 34:12. I'm going to keep reading it every week, maybe. Be very careful never to make a treaty with people who live in the land where you are going. If you do, you will follow their evil ways and be trapped. We're trapped right now, and we need to tear up these treaties, and we need to stop all agreements because they're being abused. Okay, we were kind. The Europeans were kind coming in. We didn't come in war and slaughtering. We came in signing treaties and making agreements. And instead, all of that is now being abused. And it was never the intention of these treaties when they were created. Just like when we had Brian Peckford just on, we had agreed that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is being abused. It is being used and misaligned and misinterpreted. And that's the exact same thing that's happening. The United Nations and Trudeau government being signed on with them as the arm at the UN. These people are talking hats, and they are advancing agendas that were never signed on to. And we better be willing to get up and fight. So I hope when I launch this agreement, you will take the time. It's only a few minute reads. It looks long, but I didn't know what to take out. The information's so important. And I would like to see this go out to the media en masse. I should provide the link to that actually in the action. And as well, take your time and send it to every single sitting MP. They need to be notified, and Canadians we're done with the billions of dollars of our tax dollars is what's being spent on this political pandering and this United Nations takeover. This is robbery, this is theft, and this is treason, and we still need to start using the language. Okay, so then I'm going to go on to, this was just, I saw this headline, and I don't often address the issue of abortion. We're working on it in the background. When I talk to certain individuals, there's organizations in Canada where this is their number one issue, and they're working very hard. Their expertise in legislation is amazing, but we are the only developed nation in the world that has no abortion legislation. And this really hit me. Scientists demand ban on boiling live crabs, which I hate to say I agree with. I can't stand it. I don't eat crab because I'm just like, what are you doing to those crabs, right? Anyways, but because they feel pain, but aborting babies still okay. And in the abortion process, I mean, they are pulling babies' limbs off their bodies. And in Canada, abortion is legal all the way up to full term. This is disgusting, and this grieves God. And we've been talking a lot about Canada being a Christian nation, and boy, isn't it God just giving it to us. We're suffering big because we have not taken this seriously enough. Trudeau wants to say we're not having enough children. Well, it doesn't help when they're aborting hundreds of thousands of the population, and they're not teaching our kids about waiting until marriage to have sex. And instead, in the school system, they're promoting it and promoting abortion. Something is very sick in Canada. It's become very dark, and through prayer and repentance, we can turn it around. Okay, Brian was on with me on the Empower Hour, and we were talking about what happened in France. And this is massive. I was reading about it last week, and I decided not to report on it. I thought, oh, I'll wait to see how this goes. But they had a non-confidence vote in France. And if you'll remember, Macron became president, and he appointed this guy, Michael Barnier, to become the prime minister. And everybody hates the left now. I mean, they can't stand the globalists. And so the French government is collapsing, as well as I think it's West Germany is not working out well either. They had a minority government. They're doing it based on the finance and the budget. They're broke. So Emmanuel Macron is going to have to figure out who he can put in as the prime minister. But, you know, he stole the election from Marine Le Pen. He did it legally, but he pulled a fast one. And Marine Le Pen, I mean, she is the one talking about immigration and all the things that are important to us, that are important, as well as talking about putting Christianity first in many of these nations. Everybody is feeling the persecution. This is enough. We need to return to God, and God is answering prayers in the nations that are doing that. But we need you on the front line out there fighting with us. Okay, I always do a little financial thing, and there's lots going on. And so this was back from 2016. Just hear what this fella has to say about cash.
The problem is we are going to a digital currency society where cash will be gradually eradicated, either through non-use, or a lot of countries and a lot of governments are trying to actively ban it. So they're putting limits on how much you can use cash, say, you know, $1,000, and if it's more than $1,000, using cash is illegal. When we go to the society, we have to really think about the implications. Do we want a society in which our digital money is under complete surveillance and complete control, where if you go to the wrong protest, or if you support the wrong political campaign, or if you make a payment to the wrong person or receive money from the wrong person, suddenly your money disappears. It's no longer yours anymore. It's frozen, it's seized, it's gone. And someone has control of that. Corporations, banks, governments, and in most cases, there is no difference between corporation, bank, and government, right? And so that's one scenario. And the other scenario is one in which individuals control their money. And it is digital money, but it's digital cash like Bitcoin, where you can pay an individual from one person to another, just like I can with cash today, without any other party getting involved. What really strikes me as amazing is that we've gotten used to this idea so quickly, which is that we no longer pay people. We no longer pay people directly. The less we use cash, the more we pay people through a corporation, right? So from tipping your valet to tipping your taxi driver to tipping wherever, tipping is pretty much the last remaining part of our society where cash is used to pay from one person who is not an incorporated entity to another person who is not an incorporated entity. Everything else you have to pay through a corporation, whether it's a bank, right? Whether it's Venmo, whether it's PayPal, whether it's any of those things. And we've gradually gotten used to this environment where we can't pay another person unless there's a corporation involved. And that's astonishing to me. And as cash disappears, that then becomes a final fact, that every single payment in your life will be from you to a corporation.
And that corporation takes a piece of that, every single thing.
And not just that, it doesn't just take a piece, it also controls and surveils and monitors your use. And if you violate the terms and conditions, you are destitute.
Wow.
So the issue is not what.
So, all right. We've been hearing, that's back in 2016. I personally use cash once in a while. If I forget to bring some cash with me or take some cash out, I will use my debit, maybe filling up with the car. I might use debit. But anyways, I don't like using the credit cards. I don't like giving any of these individuals, the extra. And I pay everything off every single month. I'm not going to pay them interest. But people are living outside of their means, and you really need to learn to live within your means. And I'm going to have Tanner Nade back on the show in January. I thought that'd be a great way to start the year off, is talking about our finances and how to save. So we'll speak more about that. But if we don't use cash, we're going to lose it. And here was another article. It just came out. Oh, sorry. It was June 30th. Canada sleepwalking into cashless society. Consumer advocates warn. And so I just wanted to emphasize again tonight, please, you know what? Use cash so quickly. So a lot of you even have tap. I turn the tap off. I don't want the tap. There's just certain reasons I do that. Sometimes fraud can take place. You can't make it so easy, but I know it's cool. I'm gonna get my Starbucks and I'm gonna use my tap. And but first of all, going to Starbucks isn't cool. Not if anybody from the freedom movement sees you. Okay, you should be boycotting them as well as Tim Hortons. Come on, let's support other local coffee shops and not these globalist traders. And anyways, again, there's that little side trap. I'm just going down there. So anyways, use cash. The point is use cash. Starbucks doesn't even take cash. I had to go through once. This was like last year with my daughter-in-law. I needed something. It was a $100 bill and I needed it changed. The girl couldn't count. They had to go to the cash box. It literally took about 20 minutes to get my little coffee and my cash. That's the other thing about using cash, right? We need to make sure our kids can count money and they know. Okay, the other big deal is they want to go all cyber. This is definitely a newer report, and it is stating cyber attacks expose flaws in cashless ambitions. Norway, Sweden, and now Israel confront the risks of over-reliance on digital systems. I mean, didn't we all call this? If it's online, anything can be hacked. That's what hackers live for, right? It's the challenge. Let me get through this. And even companies will hire hackers to say, you know, where's the back door? Find it. And so of course it's going to get hacked. This is nothing about us, having a more secure financial system. This is about government control. And as that gentleman said, if you go to the wrong rally or support the wrong party, well, no banking for you and no groceries, right? No grocery, no soup for you. Do you ever see that one? Anyways, some of you will know what I'm talking about. All right. Texas has this really, really bold move that they made. I love the title here. Alert, Texas just proposed the biggest up yours to the Federal Reserve ever, gold and silver coins. And I won't play this video. I'm just going to go back. So yeah, they've got all these beautiful coins that they've created. And so they're actually going to back their money have silver gold backing. And that's the way it used to be. And right now, this fiat money, the cash paper that we have in our hands, because of the 1 trillion deficit that Justin Trudeau and Ken Hardy and I could go through all the Liberal list. I'd like to name them and just let's make it public. We should all get our Liberal, whoever the Liberal MPs are. I unfortunately have Ken Hardy in my writing, and we should put their face on social media and just ask people to comment, just research them a little bit. What good has this, can you tell me any good that this individual has done? I think we really need to start making them stars of their own show, and let's see what kind of reviews they get. Okay, we created this page under current issues. I think I have that open right here. You can go right here on finances, because we've had some good people coming on the show talking about finances and explaining silver and gold, the fiat system, and how to order silver and gold. I've mentioned Steve Miller before. He's handling the orders for the members of Action for Canada. He's giving everybody a fantastic deal, best deal that you'll get. And the best part is as well that he also blesses Action for Canada with a donation as part of his sales commission. So I really encourage you, if you're going to buy from anyone, please buy from Steve. Steve's our guy. But anyways, he gives really good information on here. And of course, here is Tanner. If you know of any financial people or something you want us talking about, please send a message to call2@actionforcanada.com. We're not going to be endorsing anybody else for silver gold sales, because of course we've got an arrangement, a support here, I should really say, with Steve. But anybody else that can come in and actually educate Canadians in a meaningful way, Tanner will be coming back to help us out with how to spend our funds. And there was a guy that Doris just had on with the homeschool group, and he was talking also, said something like 9 kids, and he saved up $20,000 cash in a suitcase and went and bought a car with it. So if somebody can do that, right, with 9 kids, and there's great creative ways that you can save money, and we want to pass those tidbits on to you. Okay, down in the States, Republicans introduced bill to define male and female based on biological differences. Absolutely stunning, shocking, the world that we're living in. The reason I'm starting off with that is because we're going to get to the LGBTQ here. This is great, right? This is just those radical activists, all about love and equal rights. It's like their rights trump everybody else's rights. The provincial human rights commissions, tribunals, they need to be abolished. Because there's always dueling rights going on with them. And the radical trans activists seem to be the ones that are winning at times at the provincial level. And so this nasty little LGBTQ group called, where's the name of them? In this little town of Emo, they were demanding that their flag be flown during Pride Month. And it ends up that the town didn't even have a flagpole. Like they didn't have an extra flagpole. And, but anyways, didn't matter. The tribunal ended up ruling in their favor and said the mayor had to pay $10,000 in a fine. Oh, sorry, the town had to pay $10,000. The mayor had to pay $5,000, and he had to go for some radical training exercise so that he could learn how to capitulate to the socialist agenda. And anyways, this is the good news. He's refused. He's refused. He's come out and said he's not doing this. And so when I posted it on my Twitter the other day, I actually provided the emails to the township and to the mayor. And I said, please send him a note of support and thank him. Let him know that he has millions of Canadians that are backing him and whatever he needs. I've been in touch with a lawyer that I know. And I said, hey, can you help this guy out? Help this little town out, because there's no way that they should get away with this. And this is where we need to come together. We need to raise the funds in order, because this is a fight worth winning. So well done to the mayor in the little town of Emo. What a funny name, eh? to go all emo. You'd think that they'd be a little more radical, but obviously they are more traditional and they respect everybody's rights, as do the residents or the mayor and council in the little town of, where is the name of it? Sorry, Barhead. Kim would know where that is. I'm not from Alberta, but I'm going to look it up. And so they voted in favor of a neutrality bylaw for municipal crosswalks and flags, which would ban pride flags and rainbow crosswalks on town property. And so this is fantastic news. That's the second town in Alberta who is doing this. This didn't happen from people sitting at home. This happened when people were lobbying their township or their municipalities and stating that this needs to be a public neutral space. Plus, I don't want tax dollars wasted on this, on all this preferential treatment. People are really hurting right now financially, and it's just enough of all of this. People are done with it, and the LGBTQ should back off because they're really only hurting themselves. This is really just the beginning. It's just unraveling for them. This is also in Campbell River. And if we don't stand up, if we don't boycott organizations like Starbucks and Tim Hortons, this is what happens. And in this particular one, they are willingly allowing a hairy chest man to come into the women and children's change room and do whatever he likes. It says here he's in tiaras, sparkles, and frills. Can you imagine little girls going in with their moms who loves tiaras, sparkles, and frills? This is a predator coming into a woman's space. He is not a woman, and he has no right being in that space. And so, you know what? To get the community funding, there should be massive campaigns against this. I don't live in Campbell River, but I'm telling you, we have an amazing chapter leader, Diane, in Campbell River. And she was already all over this and sending me information on it, saying we should boycott them. And absolutely, you don't need Action for Canada telling you to do this. You start getting people together and you start the boycotting. But hopefully it's happening through a chapter. the reason we need to take this is because they can escalate if we don't put a stop to it. And this father has lost a huge battle. This was over years. This particular father, he lost custody. He had twin boys, and his ex-wife is going to put the son on puberty blockers. I think he's 16 or 17 years old now. They'll go ahead and do mutilating surgery, and I can just imagine how that exhausted and how discouraged that father is. He says, maybe I'll see them when they grow up. But this wicked woman thinks she won this battle and is going to go ahead and support her son's transition. And parents' rights are, in a very delicate place right now. And in Canada, we are fighting like crazy in provinces across Canada for parental rights and to protect our children. So another good reason to really support Action for Canada financially. If you can become a monthly donor, please do that. We have got so many good, effective campaigns and resources. Nobody in Canada other than Action for Canada has the type of resources and campaigns that we do in pushing back, and we know we're successful. We're talked about in provincial legislatures, and we've overturned amazing things like SOGI 123 is just a reminder. In Saskatchewan, we can get this work done, but we need your financial support in order to do it. Okay, so this week you might have heard all about the stuff going on in Montreal, and I saw this article and I was just like, man, those Muslims, these activists, I tell you, they're sneaky. And they're clever, the enemy of my enemy is the enemy of my enemy as my friend, and like until they're not. And so here they're using the Jews as, this, I don't say as patsies, I guess, in order to continue to go, yeah, Palestine in the streets and break our windows and destroy things. And so I've just sort of said, yeah, warm up the engines of the cargo planes. Like, let's just start shipping them out. They don't belong here. These are terrorists in our streets. And the reason this is the actual article, look at this man. I mean, that's a Muslim saying Jews say stop something in Israel. Okay, like, are you kidding me? This guy hates Jews. So how can they say they're locking arms with the Jewish community in Canada against, what's going on in Palestine? It makes no sense to me. And their violence is evidence that they're not sincere in this. They are not out there in a meaningful, thoughtful way, respecting Canadians and the gift they have from being in this country. It's a privilege to live here, not a right. These people don't have a right here. And that's why I say if they got citizenship, if they're here temporary, revoke it. If they're getting refuge here, you've burnt your bridge. You need to go back to where you came from. And that was very much what happened in Montreal, evidenced in Montreal. According to the Toronto Sun, in the last year, Montreal has endured the most anti-Semitic hate crimes of any city in North America. And since Hamas massacre in Israel on October 7th a year ago, anti-Semitic incidents in Canada have increased by an astounding 670%. This is disgraceful. This is disgusting. This man is disgusting. All right. They know what they're doing, bringing the Palestinians in here to commence war against Canadians. It's not just the Jews, because they're coming after all of us. And this is evidence. Toronto's first Muslim deputy mayor, Asma Malik, calls for pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants. She needs to be removed. She's a threat to this nation. She has previously been in videos supporting terrorism, supporting the Palestinians. How in the world did she qualify to run for office? This is why you need to be very, very involved in the elections, and we need to push to have all foreigners removed from office. That is not an exaggeration. And it's not unreasonable. Standing with, that's right. She was at events standing with Hezbollah. Now, let's bring it a little closer to Alberta. So there's something I just learned about called Canadian Halal Financial Corporation. Muslim Canadians get more alternatives to mortgage mortgages, avoiding interest. Here it is again. Sorry, that was the anti-Semitic stuff in Montreal. I had meant to go here. Look at that. An endorsement by none other than Daniel Smith. With Alberta's innovative approach to enable halal mortgages, more people may be able to access mortgage lending services in this province. Well, let's go one more. This fella, Thomas, he's the CEO. Okay, he was former deputy premier, endorsed by, I understand, Daniel Smith. He's born in Poland. He's you could say he's a white guy, and now he's CEO at Halal Financial Corporation. So what is going on here? This is Canada, and they say this is Sharia law. This is disturbing to me. It's very concerning. As well, this is, if you didn't believe me before, this is MAC. They are the ones, Muslim Association of Canada, who are currently under investigation by CIA for funding of terrorism. They need to be designated as a terrorist organization, and all of their schools need to be shut down in Canada. I had one more. Federal government adds Yemen-based. That's right. So the Houthis have now been added to the terrorist list in Canada. Whatever that means, Trudeau doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. But I believe that MAC and the Muslim Brotherhood, they have ties. It is reported that MAC has ties. There's been evidence provided. And so how they're still running as an organization and why they're permitted to launch all of these schools in Canada really perplexes me. This is back from 2014. We've known it for a long time, decades, that this has been a problem. Muslim Brotherhood has a significant presence in Canada, in our Liberal government, okay? Not in elected positions across this nation. And, okay, so in study urging probe into the group. Has Canada designated them as a terrorist organization so that we can shut down all the organizations that are fully funding them and tied to them? That would be a good start. That's the Islamic schools alone in Ontario, including MAC. This should concern you. We need to shut down all manifestations of Islam in Canada. Please look up under current issues, Action for Canada's political radical Islam page. You will be so well educated. This is not racism. This is not hate towards moderate Muslims. This is a fight for the survival of Canada. And in order to do that, we need to shut down every mosque, every temple, every Islamic center, and every school that is tied to terrorism. And let's see what's left in the end. And then talk to me about how racist I am. Please sign our petition to put a full stop on mass immigration and demand a moratorium until we can get everything regarding immigration sorted out, until we can deal with all the cultures forcing their failed system of governance into our beautiful nation. We are in a fight for the life of Canada and for the future of our children and grandchildren. Okay, again, please donate to Action for Canada. If the work that we're doing, you can say, man, that is significant. Tanya, thank you so much to you and your team for the hard work that we're doing, not only at national, but at all of the communities across the nation where we have chapters. And please know as well, there's lots of people who don't have a chapter in their region, but who are still using our incredible resources during COVID, was to get masks off their children, stop vac stations, keep their jobs, etc., and using them currently to make sure their teachers aren't teaching radical, sexual, deviant material and passing that on to their children, and just mixing up their minds and leading them down a very dark path. So if all of our work means something to you, then please make a donation today and become a monthly donor. Okay, next week I will be on the Empower Hour, and again, I encourage you to come and listen. I am going to have a lineup of the wins. I love building the picture of what it looks like when I say we are winning, and how these wins are advancing and more wins are on the way. But we really do need your help, and I'm not just talking financial there. We need you to show up. We need 1 million active Canadians, and we could turn this over so fast. We really could. Okay, we had Brian Peckford on tonight. We were talking about this being a Christian nation and how important that is to our existence and our freedom. And I had found this. I had it in the report that went out on Monday with the weekly news update and the invitation for Honorable Peckford coming on. And I just love it. It's just more evidence of Canada being a Christian nation. As you just scroll down and see throughout Parliament, all of the Bible verses that are on windows and monuments and buildings and the buildings themselves. It's absolutely incredible. So I'm going to quote a few of them, but I saw this sign, Dominion of Canada, in this room in 1866-7, delegates presenting the provinces of Canada, Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, under the chairmanship of the late Right Honorable Sir John A. Macdonald, PC, I won't read all that, framed the Act of Union under which all British North America except Newfoundland is now united under one government as the Dominion of Canada. Isn't it just disgusting that the natives and the immigrants that really, I mean, Black people are coming here and claiming slavery and maligning Canadians and calling us colonials, accusing us of colonialism. It's like, well, why don't you just go back to where you came from then? Why are you here, smearing us and saying all these hateful things and tipping over John A. Macdonald? Nobody was perfect, but we truly don't know all the details of what took place when the Europeans came here. We're getting more of that information. We're getting more educated, but it wasn't a picnic. And they created a very good society for us. And for that, I'm very, very appreciative. And we need to re-erect the John A. Macdonald statues and undo the damage of the last 9.5 years under 9 years of Justin Trudeau. So the reason I talked about specifically the Dominion is because here on the building, it says He, God creator, God of the Bible, He shall have dominion also from sea to sea. And that's the dominion they were speaking about here in 1866-7. So praise the Lord for everything that our fathers of Confederation, so gifted us with, and it's our time to fight to protect and preserve it. In closing, Proverbs 29:18 says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keeps the law, happy is he." And the law would be the word of God and proclaiming that Jesus Christ is Lord over Canada. So anyways, that's it. I'm going to just stop sharing my screen now. I just want to thank you so much for joining me for the weekly news update. And we do all of it on a Wednesday night. We do the Empower Hour and the weekly news update because that's when our production team is together and to make the best time of the cost of this and of our team's time. And so there are many people that stick with us, and I always want you to know I really appreciate that. So please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and by subscribing to our Rumble channel, and then also sharing this information as far and wide as you can. So thank you. God bless you. God bless Canada. And I'll see you next week.
Do you want to look great and protect your rights? Join Action for Canada with our stylish protective gear. Our slim fit women's t-shirts are like a second skin, giving you the power to tackle any challenge. Made from a super soft blend of 90% cotton and 10% polyester, it's perfect for your everyday heroes that want to tell the world that they have had enough. Our men's t-shirts are like your everyday armor. Same quality, same comfort, and designed to keep your heroic look intact. And if you need extra protection, our mid-weight hoodies are here to save the day. With a pre-shrunk blend of 60% cotton and 40% polyester, these hoodies are your trusty sidekick against the cold. Plus, the pouch pocket is perfect for storing snacks because every hero needs their fuel. Deflect negativity with our 11-ounce ceramic mugs. They're dishwasher and microwave safe and perfect for holding your favorite beverage or your morning dose of justice. Our 100% cotton canvas shopping totes with double carry handles and prints on both sides. These totes can carry your groceries and your mission to save the planet. Stay warm and stylish with our form-fitting toques. Perfect for winter adventures. Made from acrylic and polyester, They fit most sizes with an adjustable cuff, keeping your brain warm for all those brilliant ideas. And don't forget our 6-panel structured caps, designed to protect your head from too many UV rays or bad hair days. Every purchase helps support our movement to protect Canadian rights. Visit Action for Canada now and gear up for the fight so together we can protect what matters most and help make a difference.
Hearts will pursue it. You have a virtuous heart if